Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. I want you to tell me if you think that this microphone is too low. I'm doing everything I can to actually give it as a reasonable shot as I can. It's a new microphone, it should be working okay. Anyway, I'm going to talk today about the requirements of the prison service for staff to work overtime. It's ever been the case they don't employ enough staff, so basically they require the staff that they do have to work overtime, and the way they do it is they coerced the Prison Officers Association, and persuaded them that they would have an agreement that they would work what's known as compulsory overtime. Still going on to this day, I believe. And the idea of compulsory overtime is that you're contracted to do, 40 hours a week. Yeah, and you do your 40 hours, and then they call you in on extra duties because they have a shift rota. So that one day you'll work like 12 hours, and the next day you might work 8 or 6 or whatever. Except you don't. You work 12 hours all the way through. And you get called in, you have every other weekend off, except you don't have every other weekend off, you get called in on extra duties. Now, the problem that you've got is that staff delude themselves into thinking that they're getting extra money here for working 60, maybe 70 hours a week. Seriously. And I've had communication from people who are working in the prisons now saying that they've been working 70 hours a week. Ridiculous. It is ridiculous in this day and age that we work all that overtime. It's a damn insult. I mean, you just don't do it. There's office workers, bank workers in London, they don't even go in anymore. HSBC are selling off. That big building where they've got, it's like a pyramid at the top, HSBC, they're selling that off, or selling off certain floors and reducing the staff because they're working from home. So that's what they're doing, sat round in their gym jams all day, taking our money. I think that's what the banks are particularly good at, yeah? So anyway, the prison service are continuing to require staff to work 60, 70 hours a week. And as I say, the staff are deluding themselves that they're getting extra money for working all these extra hours. What they're basically getting is a basic living wage for working 70 hours a week, when they should be getting a basic living wage for working 40 hours a week. And don't forget, as a jailer, you can't exactly work from home, can you? You can't say, I'll remotely unlock these people and talk to them over the internet. Not like I do. I mean, I do this, at home in my office. And I find it's perfectly good. I mean, don't forget, I used to go into Strange Ways. Used to set off at usually about 5:30 in the morning and run in to Strange Ways from a place called Flixton in Manchester, near Urmston. And I used to run into Strange Ways with a pack on my back, with my uniform in, and tracksuit on, jog in, get changed into my uniform, do my shift, switch it back, then I had a bike, and I used to cycle back. And the next day I'd cycle in, then I'd run back, It didn't matter if I was on late, so it didn't matter, I'd just stick to that strict regime, That was when I was fit. I'm bollocks now. Anyway, let me tell you this, that's the staff are deluding themselves. They're only getting a basic wage. Whether they should do 40 hours, get the same money, but the Home Office don't want that. And the prisoners aren't allowed out because they haven't got enough staff to get them onto rehabilitation programs, workshops, library, all the rest of it, all gone. Can't do it. Not enough staff to supervise it. So basically the poor inmates are banged up 23 hours a day. You get out for the lunch, maybe you get out for an hour for the exercise if they're lucky. At Strangeways, it only had to do a couple of drops of rain and off the exercise yard, wrote in the daybook, inclement weather. A couple of drops of rain, that was what they did. I mean, anybody who's been inside prisons like Strangeways and Pentonville and all that, they know the score. Yeah. As soon as a couple of drops of rain, they're in. I mean, you can see the point. I mean, if everybody gets soaking wet through, what are they going to do with all that? Are they going to change the clothing? Well, they're not, are they? So they don't. Just get them off the yard pronto and bang them up. I believe that at a lot of jails now, they're not having association at night. They used to have at Strangeways and at the Scrubs association at night. You know, where they'd allow certain landings out and go down on the ones and they'd play things like ping pong, or some places have got pool tables and what have you. But if they haven't got the staff to do it, they haven't got the staff to do it, so they don't do it. It's the same throughout the system. And as I've previously been banging on with this drum about that they've got advertisements out there for the prison service, got young women on these advertisements saying anybody can be a prison officer. Really? So what are they attempting to recruit? I'll tell you what they're attempting to recruit. Anybody that will put the uniform on, get a set of keys and go in there and do it. You wouldn't see Rishi Sunak plodding the landings, would you? Anyway, that's my gripe for today. That they're still, after all this time. Listen, have a look at that BBC documentary Strangeways. In episode 3, it's called Screws. You'll see me in there, in the canteen, they call it the Cardoma, you know, in the Cardoma with a load of staff saying we should not, in this day and age, that was in 1979 by the way, we should not be forced to work overtime. Compulsory overtime is a thing that should have gone out the window with Charles Dickens. But no, they continue with it today because they can get away with it. And the Prison Officers Association, they're doing nothing about this. Nothing. The problem is that when you come to the time, when you're assuming that you managed to do, because it used to be a real career, you know, where you got a proper pension at the end. The best you could get was what's known as 40/80ths. So you got half pay at the end. And 40/80ths, I mean, back in them days, I think my last wage, and I've still got the wage slip somewhere, I think I showed them you the other week, my last wage was £17,500. This is in 1985. Here we are, virtually 40 years later, and people are starting on 20,000, 23,000. I mean, 40 years later. Goodness me, eh? What's happened? The POA have allowed this to go right down the pan. That's why I said you can't have a trade union that's run by management. Run by management, what are they going to do with it? The managers are going to run it for the management. That's what they were doing. Anyway, I've got a specialist request here from Larry the Goatherd, who wants me to recite a poem. He wants me to recite Old Sam by Marriott Edgar, which is a likely tale about a soldier that drops his rifle. Are you sitting comfortably? Have you all bought my book, by the way? Of course you have. I bet you have, yeah. Catherine has, and Paula has. I think Bob the Bob has. Larry has. Anyway, here we go. This is my attempt at Old Sam by Marriott Edgar. I'll read it in a dialect. I'll read it in like a Lancashire dialect, because I believe that's how Stanley Holloway did it when he recorded this in the 1930s, I believe it was. Old Sam by Marriott Edgar. It occurred on evening before Waterloo, and troops were lined up on parade, and Sergeant inspecting 'em he was a terror, of whom every man was afraid, all excepting one man who was in the front rank, a man by the name of Sam Small, and him and the sergeant were both daggers drawn. They thought nought of each other at all. As Sergeant walked past he was swinging his arm, and he happened to brush against Sam, and knocking his musket clean out of his hand, it fell to the ground with a slam. "Pick it up," said Sergeant, abrupt like, but cool. But Sam, with a shake of his head, said, "Seeing as thou knocked it out of me hand, perhaps thou'd pick the thing up instead." "Sam, pick up the musket," the sergeant exclaimed with a roar. Sam said, "Thou knocked it down, right? Then thou'll pick it up, or it stays where it is on the floor." The sound of high words very soon reached the ears of an officer, a Lieutenant Bird, who says to the sergeant, "Now what's all this here?" And the sergeant told what had occurred. Sam, pick up thy musket," Lieutenant exclaimed with some heat. Sam said, "He knocked it down, right, then he'll pick it up, or it stays where it is at me feet." It caused quite a stir when the captain arrived to find out the cause of the trouble, and every man there, all excepting old Sam, was full of excitement and bubble. Sam, pick up thy musket," said Captain, for strictness renowned. Sam said, "He knocked it down right, then he'll pick it up, or it stays where it is on ground." The same thing occurred when the Major and Colonel both tried to get Sam to see sense. When old Duke of Wellington came into view, well, the excitement was really intense. Up rode the Duke on a lovely white horse to find out the cause of the bother. He looks at the musket and then at old Sam, and he talked to old Sam like a brother. Sam, pick up that musket," the Duke said, as quiet as could be. Sam, pick up that musket. Come on, lad, just to please me." "All right, Duke," said old Sam, "just for thee I'll oblige, and to show thee I meant no offence." So Sam picked it up. "Gradely, lads," said the Duke. "Right, boys, let battle commence." There you go. Old Sam by Marriott Edgar. Hope you all enjoyed that. Tales from the jails for today. Don't forget, like, subscribe and all the rest of it. Sign me petition. Bye.